Howdy ho, H2Os, Roller Bros, and one of Dutch's boys alike. I'm your guide Q, and welcome to r/datinghell. I looked up a picture for bad date, and I found it very interesting that it was almost exclusively women having a bad time with men doing something stupid. I think I found one picture in this entire set of a man being upset with a woman, but I think it's because probably most of the articles that these pictures come from have women as the target audience. But anyway, thanks to Walter Fate for doing some videos on this subreddit and making me aware of it. Let's get into these crazy date stories. So we've got a few really crazy date stories, and the last one is just absolutely catastrophic. But you can see that this only has like 161 upvotes. This is one of the top posts of all time. So if you like this subreddit, go over there, show it some love, maybe share this video or the subreddit with a friend. Tell your stories if you've been on a bad date. But anyway, let's get into the story. First date post-divorce. I'm off to a flying start. I just got back home about an hour ago from a really bad date. My first action was to take a warm bath with hot cocoa. My second is to write this post. Firstly, we are both a bit late because the roads are really bad tonight. Think just enough new powder to hide the thick layer of ice underneath. But we're both late and we get there around the same time, so no big deal. When we were seated, he suggested ordering a bottle of wine to share. I said that I would only have one glass since I had to drive home. He said that he had a friend who could pick him up and ordered the bottle. While we were waiting for the wine, he started talking politics. It didn't take long for me to give the let's agree to disagree line. Apparently he thinks that's stupid. People should talk these things out until they come to a consensus. Good idea in theory, I agree, but not in practice, especially since we aren't even politicians who make those decisions. Then the wine arrived and we ordered dinner. He finished his portion of the bottle before the appetizer arrived, so he ordered another bottle, later a third. As he got drunker, he became more argumentative. At the end of dinner, he suggested that we go to a bar to drink even more, I suppose. I declined, so he called his fictitious friend for a ride. No answer. He dialed a few more numbers and then said he guessed he'd drive himself home. No, hell no. No hecking way no. Not after almost 3 bottles of wine. This guy must be a heavy drinker because he was walking fairly normally. I said I'd drive him home and asked where he lived. He says he was just down the highway a bit, so I put him in the passenger seat of my Honda Civic. Just as I'm buckling my seatbelt, he asked if I could tow his car so that he'd have it in the morning. I said I drive a Honda Civic. Next, he asked me if I could drive his car, some V8 pickup, and tow mine. I've never towed a car in my life, towed a lawnmower once, and that was complicated enough. I certainly did not intend to start with an unfamiliar car at night in horrible conditions. I told him so in fewer words. He wasn't happy, but I had his keys in my pocket. Yes, I gave them back when he was safely home, so he acquiesced. Turns out that when he said he lived down the highway a bit, he actually meant it was 20 miles, 32 kilometers. The roads were so bad that it took almost 40 minutes to get there. Then the idiot wasted another 20 finding his apartment because he only moved in 2 weeks ago. Seriously though, there are 2 streets in that town. How hard can it be to figure out where you live? Then, of course, I had to drive back home as snow continued to fall rapidly. Oh, and there was a car crash too. That whole trip took more than 2 hours. The dinner lasted 1. I spent more than 2/3 of my date making sure the guy didn't get behind the wheel drunk. Were I still Catholic, I would pray that my suffering from this date be offered for the soul of a dear friend who was killed by a drunk driver at age 14. Being an atheist, all it has done is made me sad and angry about said friend all over again. So, I mean, you could tell that this date was going to be a disaster from the moment that he started talking about politics and refused to let it go, but amazing job by you on driving this dude home. Even though it was extremely inconvenient, you totally could have saved a life, or if not multiple lives, that night if something bad had happened. So even though your suffering may not help your friend in whatever afterlife may or may not exist, it saved a life here on Earth, so good for you, good job. Are you for real? I met this guy at my friend's boyfriend's barbecue. He seemed nice and my friend gave him her seal of approval, although she didn't know him too well because it was her boyfriend's friend. At any rate, here are the highlights of my date. He starts telling me about how he doesn't ever want to get married. Okay, not everybody does, but then he says how he really wants to procreate. Yes, he used the word procreate, and it's fun to practice procreating, then winks at me. Glad we ordered a bottle of wine, let me pour another glass. He asked me what high school I went to. It's a private high school. My parents sacrificed a lot for my education, with my mom working 2 jobs for a little bit. But he still starts going off about how I'm a spoiled brat. Not really a nice thing to tell your date. Pour another glass. At some point, I mentioned my friend's horrible boyfriend. He tells me, I bet you're one of those girls that thinks no guy is good enough for your friends. I tell him that this boyfriend is physically abusive, throws my friend off the front of a moving boat, chases her with knives, etc. He responds with, well, what did she do to deserve it? I'm sorry, I tell you my friend is being physically abused by her boyfriend and you make a joke about it? I should have gotten up and left at this point, but I don't think I had the gumption. I just waited for the date to be over and finished the bottle of wine. When our dinner was over, we were walking back to the train station. He lived in the suburbs, but was coming back into the city the next day to help our mutual friend move. He kept saying how it didn't make sense for him to go back to the suburbs. Maybe he should just stay with me. You've got to be kidding me. I tell him he can stay with our friend, the one who he is helping move, if he wants to stay in the city. He says he thinks he might miss the last train. I tell him you better run. So all I can imagine here is that this dude either thought that he killed it on this date, he was like, oh, now she knows exactly what I'm about, or he just wanted to, like, force you into a situation where you had to be in the same residence together, which is creepy as heck. I'm so glad that you just stood your ground and told him to pretty much get screwed. Now, this last one is longer than the others, but absolutely insane, especially since these two people were in a relationship, and this is the date that ruined everything. It pushed everything over the edge. So let's get into it. I've mentioned this before in passing, but I will finally write the whole story here to celebrate this new subreddit. I was in my first real relationship at 26. I was overweight and lacked confidence my entire life, but I had lost weight and found a girl who liked me. We'd been dating for almost 6 months. She was hot, but she had issues. 4 times she had blacked out while drinking and became a total douche. She was also on antidepressants, which she was bad at taking. She wasn't super affectionate when sober, and she was too reliant on her parents. Oh, and she may have occasionally puked up dinner. Now, I'm not sure if that is in regards to an eating disorder or because of the drinking thing. I just want to start off this story by saying I'm not sure if this girl is an evil person or just has a lot of problems. I think it might lean more towards the latter, but nonetheless, it is a crazy story. This is the story of her 5th blackout. I'd already told her that if it happened again, we were done, but this one took the cake. It was restaurant week, so we went to dinner at a nice Asian restaurant. It was normal for me to spend way too much money with this girl, but that was another issue. We have a decent dinner and a few drinks. We decide to meet my friends at a bar that is close. Her friend has a birthday party the next afternoon where there's a drinking contest, so we decide to take the night easy. At the bar my friends are at, there's a special on a 10% beer. Now, just for anybody who doesn't know, beers are usually anywhere from 4 to 6% alcohol by volume. Budweiser, that's like the standard in the States, is 5%, so drinking one of these beers is like drinking 2 Budweisers at once. The first thing that my GF does is order one. I remind her that we have a long day tomorrow and that it's strong. 15 minutes later, she orders another, and she is clearly getting drunk. My friends mention the bar that they are spending the night at, and she already wants to go. So much for an easy night. Another beer for her. I am getting angry after telling her to slow down. I go outside to cool off. It's about 20 degrees Fahrenheit. My friends can tell I'm getting angry. She orders another beer. She is wasted. My friends decide to help me out and decide they're going to another bar, and we should head home. She demands to go with them. She stands up and falls down. I help her with her coat as they leave. While waiting for a cab outside, I tell her that if we don't go home, we are over. She says she doesn't care. We get in our cab. I tell the cabbie her address. She screams that she doesn't want to go to the bar, and the cabbie listens to her. When we arrive at the bar, she stumbles across the street. I motion to the bouncers to not let her in. She almost bites it while walking. For the first 15 minutes, I try with the bouncers to tell her to go home. Eventually, I just go to the smoking area and talk to random people. I try to call her brother to get him to talk sense into her, but he doesn't answer. Now 45 minutes into this and still outside, after multiple attempts by her to run past the bouncers, they literally pick her up and throw her in a cab. I get in and tell him her address. Now, you may ask why I have not left yet. Well, if she got in somehow, it was my friend's issue to deal with her, and I didn't want that to happen. Also, I was worried for her safety. At this point, I am 80% breaking up with her. About a mile and a half down the road, she starts screaming that she wants to go back to the bar. I try to calm her down, but the cabbie won't deal with it, and we get kicked out. She proceeds to walk in the freezing weather the mile and a half back to the bar. She almost gets hit by a few cars along the way. When we get to the bar, the bouncers are pissed. I asked if they're calling the cops, to which they shake their heads yes. I ask for 5 minutes and call her mother at 1 a.m. Her mother answers and I explained, and she was not shocked, which was odd. Then her mother talks to her and she listens. We get in a taxi and head to her place. I am 90% breaking up with her. On the taxi ride back, she gets pissed that I called her mother. At this point, it's worth mentioning that I was in a brace due to surgery on my arm. She leans over and starts punching me in the face a total of 6 times. I am shocked, but finally throw her into the other side of the taxi. She stops. I am 100% breaking up with her. I tell her that we are over for good and there's no coming back. She cries for the next 10 minutes to get to her house. The taxi driver says he will wait for me. I grab her keys, and after 5 minutes, stupid lock was hard, I get her front door open. I push her in and throw the keys at her and walk away. The whole time she is talking about making love with me. The cabbie has a good talk on the way home with me. When I get home, I defriended her and all of her friends on Facebook. I turn off my phone and go to bed. She calls me the next morning after I woke up and turned my phone on, like nothing happened, wanting to go to the birthday party. I remind her we are over. She cries, not remembering as usual. She asks if we can at least break up while she's sober, and I say that we can talk in a week. One day before we were supposed to meet, she has plans with her friends for happy hour. She calls me after, asking if we could meet that day instead. When she shows up, she is drunk. I can smell the vodka. After crying and demanding I hold her, she strips naked and tries to force herself on me. She was small, it wasn't happening, but if she was a guy, she would be in jail. The worst part is I never fully said my piece. I never went off and yelled at her. This would bother me until I finally had a random hookup months later. I never got over her, no matter how horrible she was, because I didn't get closure myself. Anyways, tonight I'm planning on asking the girl I'm dating to be my GF, so things do turn around. She is nothing like the previous girl. Sometimes life sucks, but it does get better. So I was going to ask if you guys would stay with somebody like this in hopes that they would get better and that the biggest problems come when they're drunk and hopefully they can overcome their addiction, their possible binge drinking disorder. I mean, it really looks like that coming from a person who used to suffer from that sort of thing. But once she tries to force herself on him, it's just game over for me. Like, there's no way you can stay in a relationship with somebody like that. I think she should be in jail. I mean, he could have pressed charges if he really wanted to. It might be hard to prove, but, you know, it's a real thing that happened, and she should not be allowed to get away with that. But I think if there's something to be learned from this, it's that maybe you should cut things off. I know it's really difficult. I've been in bad relationships that I should have gotten out of way earlier, but if you see red flags like this and things that you're definitely not willing to deal with, you should try your best to get out as soon as possible. And I know that's difficult, but it can prevent things like this from occurring. I just feel so bad for this guy, and I hope things get better for him and everything worked out with this girl. This was all posted 6 years ago, so I hope that his life has gotten a lot better since then. But like I said before, r/datinghell is a very small subreddit, so if you do enjoy these stories, please share this with a friend. Check out Walter Fate's video. I'll link his most recent Dating Hell video in the description down below. Share the subreddit with a friend. Share your stories on the subreddit, because I think this subreddit has a ton of potential. There's so many stories that could be told over there, and it's just not getting enough love right now. But anyway, you can find all my social media in the description down below, my Instagram, Twitch, and Twitter. You can also find my Amazon affiliate links for all of the equipment I use down there. But anyway, stay safe, have an absolutely wonderful day. I really hope you're drinking more water and skating on to the best of your abilities. I'll see you very soon.